Outlooks in the energy market serve as an essential guide for analysing trends in the industry. And at this IEA-IEF-OPEC Symposium on energy outlooks, experts in the sector welcomed the chance for open dialogue.
I am very glad this time that it's a far cry from the first and the second meeting way back. Now our numbers, they are not really that differ from each other. Yes, we encourage the difference because everybody has his own data, has his own decisions, has his own look into the way look into the future. But now we are not really far away.
Well, I think if you look at the OPEC baseline scenario and the IEA new policy scenario, which is basically assuming that a country pledges what countries plan to do with respect to their energy policy is carried out, they're quite similar. Both of our agencies are expecting that fossil fuels will play a role in the future, a continuing important role. In fact, even our most ambitious scenario, assuming that countries fulfill their commitments and go beyond their commitments at this COP climate change meeting, still assume that fossil fuels will be an important part of the future.
This time around, I think we learned even more than we expected about the differences and similarities in how both OPEC and the IEA see the future of energy in the short, medium and long term.
Top of the agenda at this symposium was the comparative analysis on energy outlooks, presented by Duke University's Energy Initiative.
From the very beginning, from the very first meeting of energy outlooks that we organized with the IEA and OPEC, it was very clear that we needed a document that helped us structure the conversation, a comparative document of the outlooks that different institutions are preparing about the energy future. With Duke University, we have been collaborating in creating this document, this framework that allows us to better compare outlooks, understand the trends, and in this 6th edition, we have made a lot of progress.
While there will always be differences in outlooks, some convergence is beginning to emerge.
On some of the differences in approach that are taken, in some cases where this was definitions of different energy sources or different baseline years used for analysis, the IEA and OPEC have taken actions to make it easier to compare their outlook so that you can really tell where there's differences of future viewpoint as opposed to just differences in the way things were calculated.
The sessions explored the key findings of the comparative analysis report.
What I see that is the transparency of data information from both sides, producers and consumers, are very useful element to bring this difference to narrow that the differences between the organizations and between also the industry for their assessment for the oil market in the short term, and not only the oil market, also for the energy market, the short term, long term and medium term.
I think a stabilized market is a benefit for everybody, either a producer or consuming country, and I'm sure in 2016 we'll see a good move for stabilizing come in the market.
And experts listened to the views of the industry and the impact of short, medium and long-term outlooks.
Well, the panel that I moderated was industry representatives, and they were looking at this. Mainly we were concentrating on the short term, and there seemed to be a consensus on the panel that the markets are in the process of rebalancing, oil markets, and that sometime later this year or into 2017 we're likely to see a little bit of lift in oil prices.
I mean, extremely useful. Obviously we carry out business planning that is over a 1 to 3 year cycle. And then we have further projections to a 10-year time frame. So clearly oil prices is an extremely important part of our business planning process. And whilst we get a lot of inputs from a variety of different sources, banks for example, in terms of oil price projections, to see really some fundamental science going on, which is what takes place here with these major entities such as the IEA and OPEC and IEF, is extremely important for me to give me a sense of where oil prices are going in the future and therefore to be able to plan my business accordingly.
The final session of the day examined the low price environment and its impact on the supply and demand balance, as well as stability and growth.
So I think the overall impression was that actually we need much more cooperative approach, and indeed there are no losers, there are no winners, so this black and white approach doesn't work in such a complicated matters. Actually lower oil prices result in some economic slowdown globally, so it's not that beneficial for the customers as well, and so we need to find a very balanced solution which would make happy both producers and consumers.
If there's one theme that came through in the session, that it was that in the process of companies trying to survive, they're cutting their capital expenditure by enormous amounts. And all of that has implications for the balance between supply and demand. In the medium-term future, we actually could see not enough supply because of the way companies are cutting prices just to survive in this environment.
The dialogue at the Sixth IEA-IEF-OPEC Symposium was engaging as well as educational, offering a sense of clarity to the market as key energy players got a more in-depth look at the leading energy outlooks.
It was very well received. We have now a grounds for comparison of the IEA and OPEC outlooks for energy that we didn't have before. It's a document that was complemented with another one that allows us to compare these two outlooks with those prepared by other institutions and companies. This is value added that certainly didn't exist before the producer-consumer dialogue. It didn't exist even 6 years ago. Now we have it at the IEF, and it was one way in which we started to make breakthroughs in terms of understanding of what we know is happening in the oil market and in the general projection of the energy markets through a longer term.
All of this can help them to build more informed decision and policy making in the future. For the IEF in Riyadh, I'm Etna Trainer.